Hey guys, Hrph here. Thanks for checking out the new, brand new series, Ark Survival Evolved. We had one of our loyal supporters came up with some gear for us, so we are now able to record HDMI from the Xbox out to the computer. So we are going to be starting up a new series here for Ark Survival Evolved through the Xbox One X. And we're going to play single player, for now at least, and we're going to use multiple maps. I think we're going to, we can't really do a cluster like you can on servers. You can just make it so that you can transfer freely between as many maps as you want to make on your server instances. So in our case, we're going to have to transfer between maps, and it's not as clean. But we'll work through that, and it can be a little bit dangerous, which we'll also work through. But in episode, we're calling this episode 0. So today we're just going to go over the settings that I like to use for a single player. There's no right, no wrong. It's just some of the trial and error. I've been playing Ark for about 1.5 years, so not forever like some of the guys, but. And some of these settings are brand new. Ark just, or not Ark, but the devs came out with a wildcard, I guess, came out with some sort of balancing that they did, and they've made some changes related to taming speed and XP and how fast you level up and all that kind of stuff. So. They've made stack size changes, and I think they're coming out with some TLCs for a couple of dinos, so there may be some stuff that's changed, since I played last, which was probably a few months ago. So, looking forward to digging into this and getting some gameplay going. Feel free to skip this episode if you're comfortable with the settings. Obviously, there's no gameplay here. So we're going to start off. Not sure what map we're going to start off on. It might be Ragnarok. It might be Valguero. I like starting off on those two maps just because they're resource friendly. It'd be easy to get started. And again, we're not going to restrict ourselves to sort of doing it linear, right? I really want to concentrate on the free maps because not everybody out there has the season passes that entitle you to all the DLCs. I have those, so I may do some stuff on there. We may pop over there and just grab, go hunting for some specific dinos, things like that as we go. But I kind of want to concentrate, the main living on the island and the other free maps, including the center. I actually kind of like the center. I think it's kind of a cool map. It's got a tremendous volcanic island. So it's great for hunting, just like T-Rexes and all kinds of big dinos, gigas and everything. So it has some advantages. So we'll be visiting that map. Definitely all, Crystal Isles is brand new. I don't have I did play for a couple of weeks on Crystal Isle when it came to Xbox. So I don't know the entire map out there. So we'll do some adventuring over there. Yeah, really looking forward to kicking this off. And like I said, if you're comfortable with the settings, feel free to jump ahead, watch some other episodes. But we're gonna concentrate on just some of the settings here, and I've probably talked longer than the settings require. But we'll jump through here. Let's see. I'm going to start off with the options, just because. Some of this is pretty quick. There's not a lot to change here. I usually leave the volume and stuff. What I've done is I've lowered the music volume, mostly because the music in the menus is so loud. And I did that just so you could hear me, so I wasn't shouting over the music. The volume for me is different than the volume for OBS. This is what I'm using to record this. So I've monkeyed around with it. And I think I've got it to the levels that I want, so I think pumping this music down is going to be good. The sound effects and everything else will be, as you can see, they're all pegged. So this is all default. I haven't, you can see it's not making any, oh, it did change the music volume, So it's default except for the music volume. I'm going to turn this way down. And I'm going to save it. There we go, so it applies. So I want to jump through here. There's only a couple of things here that that I really ever mess with. And the first one is obviously, you know, that music volume. So that's a little bit annoying. The UI scale is the next one. So they changed this. General scale, I don't think used to be all the way pegged. This is how big the user interface, you know, appears on the screen. And then this one is the your slot scale. So at least on the Xbox, you know, when you're playing, you have the item slots at the bottom for your hotbar. So I like to crank this all the way up because I have bad eyes and I'm old, so it helps me. Gamma correction, I like to pump gamma correction up a little bit too. I go to maybe 3/4, you know, 80% gamma. I think sometimes, even when you're out in the daylight, you know, Ark tends to be a little bit dark, and I think this just helps in general. And it's going to help probably with the quality of the videos and things like that. So, some of these other settings, really, I don't think you need to change, right? Motion blur. Now, I'm on an Xbox One Series X. I played probably half of my Ark time on, like, an old, kind of one of the original, you know, maybe 6 months into the Xbox One release, you know, is mine, original one. So some people say you can uncheck motion blur and uncheck, you know, these detailed graphics, and maybe improve the performance on your older Xbox One. But yeah, if you're running anything newer than a very old Xbox One, these are fine. I don't do HDR in VSync, so I've never messed with these. But you know, have at it. The camera stuff here, I don't really touch any of this stuff. The only other things I would point out are down here. These are relatively new on the Xbox side. The light bloom and the light shafts. So, yeah, you know, if you've played on the Xbox in the last year and a half, like I have, there are sometimes you get into Ark and you're just blinded by the sun, and you're blind. You know, it's so annoying. Like you're trying to fly, and you just can't see what you're doing or where you're going. And they've disabled those by default. You can turn them back on if you hate yourself. So I wouldn't bother to do that. And really, there were a couple of other things up here that I used to change, but you know, they have changed these defaults. So yeah, I don't see anything else here that I would bother to mess with. This Fahrenheit temperature, I'm going to check it off. Whoop, where'd I go? There it is. I have tried this in the past. I don't think it actually works. I still see Celsius degrees, you know, in game, but I always check this off just in case maybe someday it works. Maybe if you guys know where it shows up, Fahrenheit and not Celsius when this is checked. I haven't been able to find it. And I do want to point out that, you know, Ark is different on the Xbox and PlayStation than it is on a PC, right? So there are quirks specifically related to the console that I've run into that you know, we'll talk about when we get to those. But so those four things, really, that's all I like to do here. I'm going to save and exit, and then we're going to jump right into host a local, and we're going to look at our kind of server options, right? So we're not really running a server, we're just playing single player. So a lot of these don't apply, but I like to crank up the difficulty. So this, I don't know if this affects the bosses or not. It probably does. But either way, I crank this all the way up. And then I also check max difficulty a little bit further down. So the difficulty level impacts, number one, you know, the wild dinos that spawn. And, excuse me, number two, it impacts your loot quality. So when you find, you know, the supply drops, supply crates that come down, you're going to get in general, in theory, better loot on higher difficulty. So I don't know if it impacts the loot you get from fishing. It may as well. I've never had a tremendous amount of luck fishing. But we'll get into that. If we're still playing at Valentine's Day, we may have the fishing event again. So so the next, let's see, we did difficulty level. The next thing I like to, I mean, we can talk about these Dyno Damage. I think this is you know, the amount of damage tame dinos do in general and how much damage you do. So I generally leave all of these alone. And the next thing to look at really is your XP multiplier. Now, Ark recently doubled the amount of XP. So, you know, previously, if you would crank this up to 2, that's the base level now. So, I like I said, I played on Crystallis briefly after they made these changes, and it felt like I was leveling up every 8 seconds. Like, I would go chop down a few trees and make a few, you know, stone walls to build part of my base, and then be like, all right, you have 3 levels gained. And that's great, you know, but I also kind of want to, I enjoy the struggle. I enjoy, you know, the struggle in the beginning much more than I do endgame stuff. So I think because they've doubled this, I'm going to leave it alone, and we can come back and adjust these. You know, who's going to yell at us, right? So I think for now I'm going to leave these alone. Taming speed is something I probably am going to crank up. Now, Ark also doubled this to 2 times taming. So the old 2 is now 1, and I think this goes up to 6, right? No, it goes up to 3. So really, under the old rules, you can only go up to 5 before, and now, so compared to that, you can go up to 6. So I used to play on 5 times taming a lot. So I'm gonna put this at 2.5, which really would equate to did that not? Oh, I'm typing on my keyboard, dummy. So I'm going to make this 2.5. It's really hard to get the slider just right on the Xbox here. So you enter that, just hit your start key. So taming speed 2.5. That's going to impact how quickly things tame, and some things are still going to take quite a while to tame. I dare you to sit there, even with 5 times taming, trying to tame like an Anki, it's still going to take, you know, 40 minutes or something ridiculous. So, and again, you know, we're playing single player. We're not in a tribe. We don't have, you know, 6 people taking turns feeding this thing while we're running around, right? We got to sit there and let it happen. So, I don't feel bad about making some of these changes. It makes the game enjoyable, and you know, Ark is made out of the box for a team of people, you know, team of 6, 8 people, all, you know, harvesting and everybody building towards the same goal. And, you know, when you're playing by yourself, you just don't have, you know, you got to do everything yourself. So you got to help yourself out a little bit. Harvest amount. I'm not going to change this just because, especially in the beginning of the game, you can crank this way up, and what'll happen is you end up, you know, you hit one tree and you get 500 wood, right? You're not going to be able to carry it. So, you know, perhaps later in the series we can up this, but I don't mess with the harvesting amount. These water drains and things, you can turn this down if you find, you know, that you have to drink water too often, but I leave these as default. Same thing with stamina. You can up the stamina so that, you know, your stamina dreads. It's essentially giving yourself more stamina by slowing the drain. You can slow the dino drain. I don't touch any of these. Really, the next thing that I want to mess with, I think, is a checkbox. So I don't mess with any of these. The harvesting damage. This is you know, how many whacks does it take to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop, right? So again, you can make it so that you completely harvest a tree with one hit if you want. You know, I don't touch any of these. Dino count is maxed out by default, so that's a beautiful thing. Let's see, some of these I don't touch because really, you know, largely we're playing by ourselves, so we're not going to be. I don't care if people come in. Admin logging, I think that's only for admin commands, and I can go over how to get to the admin console for those that don't know. Enable the crosshair. You can turn this off. I don't know why you wouldn't do that. I need that so you know where you're shooting. You can force the no HUD, which again, you know, you can opt to turn that off with your wheel once we start playing. I don't know why you disable loot crates. These are for things I think if you hate yourself, you can force no HUD and there's no loot crates and you're playing hardcore mode and you can do all these things to punish yourself. Now, we effectively play PvE, but we're not enabling PvE modes specifically, so we're effectively playing PvP, but it's single player, so I don't enable specifically PvE mode. I disable friendly fire. I read this a couple of times, and it specifies if you're playing PvE mode, but I like to check this. I'm just looking at this. I may have missed one up top, but so we'll go back through these before we go to advanced. But so I want to, yeah, I want friendly fire. So this is your when you join a tribe. This is you know, you can't shoot your own dinos. Your own dinos can't hurt each other. They can't hurt you. You can't hurt them. So this is big. This just, you know, if your dinos are fighting a T-Rex, you can just shoot a rocket launcher at them and boom, you know, you don't have to worry about you know, damaging your own dinos. So that's a big one, you know, for us in single player. I mean, you don't have to use it if you, again, if you hate yourself and you want to kill your dinos and constantly make mistakes. Hrph makes enough mistakes. So show map player location. I like to check this, you know, when you pull up your map in game, this just shows a little pointer to where you are on the map. Now, after you play for a while, you kind of know the maps. You know, you sort of know where you are, but I don't know. I like to have it. It just adds something to the map. And I think the next thing down here is max difficulty. So I enable max difficulty, and this, you know, the maps, and I don't really, not an expert with Ark, but it seems to me, especially like, you know, if you've played the island before, you know that you tend to see higher level dinos on Ragnarok than you do. You tend to see lower level dinos on the island. It's rare to see, you know, a level 145 or something like that on the island. So max difficulty, I think, does a good job of flushing, sort of evening that out. There are, I'll give you an example. When I was playing Crystal Isles, I had enabled max difficulty, and I actually saw one of the, and I forget what they're called, but they're the ones near the, they're not the wild sort of wyverns or wyverns that just live out near the crystals, right? These are the ones that live near the center. They have a special name. I can't recall it off the top of my head. But I actually found one that was level 225 with this max difficulty. So that surprised me. I didn't realize that these guys could go that high. The highest I think I'd ever seen was around a 190 before for wyverns. That was on Ragnarok. Wyverns, I don't know which way to say that. I used to always say wyvern, and now I say wyvern, and I think that's wrong. I think it's wyvern. So pardon me as we go through the series, but anyway, so that's really it. I don't think you know, there's some checkboxes here if you want to go over structure placement, if you want to sort of enable yourself to be able to build in places that, you know, maybe you shouldn't, and you can sort of have collisions with the environment and collisions with other structures you're building. So you can turn some of this on. And again, if you hate yourself, you can turn off Dino Taming and Dino Riding. So I think that's it. I actually didn't miss one. I misread my notes here. So that's kind of it for general. And again, you know, we may decide that we need to tweak some of these. But so let's jump down here. And there isn't a ton of these either. I think I spent more time talking about the ones I don't use. So a lot of these initial ones here talk about, you know, PvE, right? So we're not playing PvE. So largely you can ignore these, I think. Unless you want to play PvE, but for our purposes we're not doing that. So in PvE your structures do decay. I joined an online server for a couple of weeks, and you know, your structures take damage over time. And eventually they'll fade away if you don't repair them. But yeah, so anyway, I check prevent diseases, and I'll say this a lot about Ark. I think Ark is hard enough. It can be a very brutal, challenging game, and the last thing you need is to get mega rabies in a cave and just, you know, you can check non-permanent diseases, but I like to just, I don't have to worry, you know, again, I'm in there solo fighting, you know, a sea of Onyx and, Onyx? No. Yeah, whatever they are. Onyx? With an S, not an X. I'm confusing Pokemon. So again, you don't have to worry about, you know, dying that way. You can force allow cave flyers. I don't usually do that. There are some caves, especially in Valguero, that you can just fly in anyway. But you know, there's something to be said for playing some aspects of Ark on foot. And I think the fact that you, especially in the island, you know, you have to go in and take all the caves down on foot. It's easier now with the cryopods. So, you know, you can now take dinos in, say, the snowy cave where you couldn't do that before. You know, you'd have to like raise dinos in the cave and all that kind of stuff. So there were lots of ways to get around it, and so I don't use cave flyers, but you certainly can. Here's some more, you know, override structures and things like that. So let's see, what else did I want to touch on? I think it's not till we get to some of the mating stuff here. The raid stuff, we don't care. We're not having raids. What do we got here? PvP. So yeah, once you get down to the world settings here, again, you hate yourself, you can turn off the imprint buff. I'm going to actually raise some of the dino, you know, growth rates. So in some cases, like for wyverns, you're still going to be able to imprint the wyvern. But for a lot of the smaller creatures, you know, they're just going to grow up faster than, you know, they'll be an adult before you would even get to the first imprinting stage. And so I don't, and I raise the health a little bit, and I raise the damage a little bit, so it sort of offsets that. So I don't specifically disable it, but we don't actually take too much advantage of it. So if you want a ton of poop, raise up the poop interval, or let's see, is it say? I've never done it, so yeah. So higher values increase the amount of poop. I don't know how much poop you need. They poop enough. The laying egg interval, I think this is just for. No, I think this is for mating animals, right? This is for tame dinos. So I'm going to leave this default. I had cranked this up a little bit in previous. I don't know if Ark actually made any changes to this or not. But again, once we get to the point where we're going to start breeding, we can come back here and mess with egg interval if we think it's, you know, I think on official it'd take like, you know, 3 hours, 2-3 hours for a mating pair to drop an egg, and that's just ridiculous. So, you know, we don't want that, but we'll see where this goes. The first time we get in there, we can come back and so see, that's why I think this mating interval, I think this lay egg interval is it's how often, like, dinos that aren't mating. Yeah, so I think I'm going to revise what I said a minute ago. So this is how often, like, a maybe not a wild dino, but like a tame dino will actually just drop an egg. Kind of like poop, right? Sometimes it has a chance to drop an egg instead of a poop. So you can crank this up if you want your, you know, these are the eggs you could just use for kibble. You can't raise them. So the mating interval, I'm going to drop this to 0.5. So this is the time, this is kind of the cooldown for mating, I guess you can say. So I'm going to do 0.5. So we're just going to drop this, and we'll see where this goes. You know, again, we may want to adjust that back to 1, but so this will reduce, you got a mating pair, this will make them, you know, drop a fertilized egg quicker. Egg hatch speed, I'm gonna raise this, I'm gonna raise this up because I think, you know, higher decreases the time. Yeah, so I'm gonna double this to 2. So that's how quickly, you know, you've got a fertilized egg, how quickly it's going to hatch. This could be a nightmare if you crank up, you know, the mate, you reduce the mating interval and crank up the egg hatching speed. You're going to be overrun with, you know, with babies like crazy. So some of this we're going to have to, again, I don't know if Ark has tweaked these, so this is going to be a little trial and error. But I have done this in the past. The problem is I have another Xbox that I played Ark on, and I turned it on to try to compare. But it needed to do an 11 gig update, so it's still doing that. So I don't have that, and I erased everything else on in this Xbox, so I don't have my previous settings to draw on. So I think baby mature speed, I'm going to double this as well. So once you've got an egg hatched, this is how quickly the dinos will mature. You can control how much food they consume if you want. I just leave this as default. I think they're going to eat food a little bit faster because they're going to mature faster, so they're going to... I think the food's going to get eaten a little bit quicker, so you just got to make sure, you know, if you're raising a dino, you got a ton of food in there anyway for it, so... harvest health, I don't really mess with this. Respawn... period. This is another big one, and this you definitely want to drop. So I dropped this all the way down. So this is just how quickly, you know, if you whack a metal node, how quickly will that metal node respawn? And the answer with all the way down to 0 is the moment you get out of render distance and you go back, it'll be back again. So it's pretty quick. But again, single player. You know, on the Xbox, we don't have the ability for mods, so, you know, I watch a lot of guys play with stack mods and other things, so they can hold, you know, 5,000 metal. And we just don't, we can't do that. We can only collect it so fast. You know, I don't want to sit around waiting an hour for a metal node to respawn, so I don't feel bad about that. It's kind of cheating, but it's also not really cheating. I think the only other thing I want to address here for the moment is so these are the cuddle times, you know, when you're raising them, and on all of this you can in the imprinting scale. I'm just going to leave all this default. I'm not going to even pretend that I've ever played with those. The day cycle speed I have played with. I have made the night longer because during the Christmas event when Raptor Claus comes out and he drops all of his presents, he drops some pretty good loot, especially if you're playing on higher difficulty. So he, yeah. So that's, you know, I do that temporarily on occasion, and Typically, I actually drop this down a little bit, but I think for now we'll start off with it. We'll start off with it at night. I may drop this just because for recording, so we can have you know, more time during the day. Spoil timers, I don't play with these at all. The decomposition time, I don't mess with any of these things. You can mess with the resource radiuses. This is how, you know, if you've ever put down a foundation somewhere and then you're like, hey, why aren't these plants growing? You know, that used to be here. I can't harvest them anymore. So this sort of regulates the distance, how far that is. So it's, you know, you can mess with this if you want. I don't play with it. Usually because if you're making a base, you want to clear around your base, right? You don't want stuff growing 5 inches away. So I think the default on that is okay, at least for me. Crops, so if you plant your 4 different four different kinds in this game, I think if you play, what is it, Primal, I forget what it's called, what is it out here? Primal Plus. Oh, Primitive Plus. Okay, if you play Primitive Plus, I think there may be some more things to grow. But in Ark, there's 4, at least that I know about. There's only 4 vegetables that you could grow. So, and you can grow, you know, all your different kinds of berries too. I don't usually grow the berries because, you know, generally you end up with a harvester that will grab all of your berries. So you don't. I don't see much of an advantage of growing berries beyond that. So yeah, you can change your crop growth speed. They grow pretty slow, but if you end up with you know, some greenhouse effect on your crops, I mean they'll grow faster than you can probably use them. So I don't generally mess with that. So the wild dino stuff I don't touch. I just leave that. Wild dinos spawn how they spawn default. Tame dinos, now I think this is kind of crappy. And again, you know, we're playing single player. But I feel like Tame dino stats per level, this is the initial, let's see. This is the initial, I'm sorry, I have a fly buzzing around my head here. So this is the initial, like when you tame a dino, how much is it going to gain per level, right? So if you tame, if you're taming, say a max level Argentavis, for example, right? You got a 150 Argentavis, and you're using kibble and you tame it, you know, perfect tame, right? You're gonna gain. The best you can hope for is 100%, and you can never get 100%, except in maybe in rare cases. I'm not even sure if you can. But I've never gotten it, even with kibble. You know, your max tame is instead of being 75, it's going to be below that. It's going to be 74. So you'll end up with a 224 Argentavis. So those 74 levels, right? How much are you going to gain in health and all these other stats? And I think it's crappy that they give you crappy health, and I think it's crappy that they give you crappy damage. So what I'm going to do, and I think we can experiment with this, but what I want to do is I'm going to jump these up to 0.5. I'm going to go 0.5. And we'll see where that goes, right? If it gets ridiculous, I mean, if we end up with a Dilophosaur that has, you know, 20,000 health or something like that, I mean, that's ridiculous, right? So, you know, we can adjust it back down to default or whatever. I'm not going to remember what default is at this point. But, and I think the damage, too, you just need to double this. I'll put it up to I'm going to put it up to 0.5 as well, I think. And again, that may be ridiculous, but you know, again, you don't want to tame a Dilophosaur and have him going and just you know, beating gigas, right? So he's got so much damage. But really, you know, having these so low, I think, is just it's just annoying. And the Tame Dino add per level. So when you invest a point, you know, your Dino levels up. You invest a point somewhere. Again, this is the same thing. So they're ripping you off with health and damage. So I'm gonna up these again. We're just gonna go with 0.5 to start with, and if you know, if we end up with an OP Argentavis or something like that, then we rule the game, right? But yeah, I just, you know, I think, you know, we are. Okay. It confuses me when I don't see the period. I don't see the period until I hit the 0. So let's see. Is there anything else I wanted to go over? Well, just the stuff for you. So I have messed with this affinity before, and I ended up with. I don't really understand it. I'm not going to touch it. I cranked this up for health and stam for health and damage one time, and I literally created the most ridiculous Argentavis that could have existed. And I actually turned it back down, and he did go down, but he didn't go down back to a normal Argentavis. He was still ridiculously high. So player stats per level. This is a multiplier, right? So when you invest a point, how high do they go? Now, some of these things, like your oxygen, for example, I think your oxygen goes up by 2 every time. But there are some things that go up just too slow. I think your health goes up okay. I think your stam goes up okay. But I would suggest up in weight a little bit. I think so. Like making this 1.5 or something like that. Let's see how. 1.6. All right, 1.6 will do it. You know what? Let me just 1.5. It's gonna bother me. It's just gonna bother me. Hrph will be bothered. 1.5. There we go. And I'm gonna suit. Wait, that's weight. Did I want to do weight? Did I mean weight? Yeah, I think I did mean weight. I would honestly do weight, damage, and because your damage goes up super slow. Now, ideally, you have dinos that do the damage for you, but you know, if you up these two, then you have to spend less points in them, and then you can, you know, it kind of helps you all around. And the other thing that I think is important here is Fortitude. Fortitude gives you, I mean, you can, you know, crank up any of these that you want, right, if you want to go crazy, but Fortitude to me is, it doesn't really seem to have an effect until you get high. So I'm going to actually double this. I'm going to put it up to 2. Fortitude, if you don't know, gives you kind of natural resistance to the cold and heat. So, you know, the cold, when you're cold, you consume, you know, your food's going to drop faster. And I think when you're hot, your water drops faster. And Fortitude means you're not going to have as nice a fur armor or something if you want to go into the ridiculously cold spot in Ragnarok. And so you just become more resistant, you know, you're a little bit more resistant to the elements. So I think that's important, especially in some aspects of the game. And the experience multipliers, you can raise these. I'm going to not touch these because, like I said, Ark just doubled the XP rate, so I'm not going to mess with that. I think most of this we don't mess around with. Only allow. Let's see. I like the floating damage text. This is, you know, if you shoot a bow, or you got a dino that ran off a little bit and he's fighting another dino, right? You just see the damage numbers. how much damage he's doing, and I think that's very handy to see. So I like to check that off. And really, I think that's about it. A lot of this is the Dino, like raid Dino stuff, and we're not dealing with raid Dinos. So platform structure limit. So you can. I think this pertains to. I can't really read the fine print there, but I think this pertains to Dino platforms. So if you have a Parasaur or a Bronto or something like that with a platform on it, this pertains to how much you can build on that. So I don't plan on ever building too much on a platform, so I'm not going to mess with it. So you can see here that the supplied loot crate quality and the loot quality has gone up. I think if we did not check off max difficulty and raise the difficulty up on the first page, then these would be lower. So I didn't change these. These go up as you crank up the difficulty. So I really think I think that's about it. These settings will just stay until you come back and change them. I don't believe you have to save it or anything, because this is outside of the game. So these just stay here until you come and mess with them. So I think that's about it. I haven't decided yet which Crystal Isles is highlighted here, but I haven't decided yet which. Definitely don't want to start on the center, but I do want to use the center as a place to visit. I'm thinking either Ragnarok or Valguero, just because the resources are pretty prevalent. Like you can get. You go to the island, you have to go up in the mountains to find most of the metal and obsidian and crystal and that kind of stuff. Whereas on Rag, you can find spots pretty much all over the place for metal. And Valguero is similar. There's metal everywhere. Much more accessible. I like these two, really. I don't know too much about Crystal Isles. I did play. Crystal is everywhere, obviously, in Crystal Isle. That's not an issue. There's an awful lot of the rocks that you get, kind of the river rocks, the rounded river rocks that you tend to get a little bit more metal from. There's a ton of those. I had trouble finding obsidian on Crystal Isle when I played, but I really didn't scour the entire map. Oh, I apologize. I think my sinuses are acting up here, so I'm gonna end this pretty soon here. But yeah, so I'm probably gonna start on Ragnarok, because that's generally what I do. And in order to do what I want to do, which is, have the ability to jump between maps. So like on Ragnarok, you can get a Griffin, for example, right? You can't get a Griffin on Valguero. You can transfer one over, but they don't spawn there. Griffins do spawn on Crystal Isle now. But they're a little bit, at least the ones that I saw, there were tons of them. And they're crazy aggressive all over the place, and it's going to be really hard to isolate one over there, but probably doable. You're just going to have to get one to follow you. But yeah, so I'm probably going to start off on Ragnarok. And what I want to do too is I may not actually post this until I've got an episode or two in the bank already. But I do want to get some play in before the or at least be in approaching a spot that'll be good level-wise for the Fear Evolved event, which starts on, I guess, October 22nd this year. So, in order to do that event, you need to be able to kill these skeletal versions of dinosaurs that spawn, and the skeletal versions are essentially alphas, right? So, if you've ever played Ark, you see there's Alpha Rexes and Alpha Raptors, and they're much more difficult to kill than your standard, even a 150 Raptor, right? A level 24 Alpha Raptor is much more difficult to kill than probably a 150 Raptor. So, in all of these, so you get Brontos. I think there were like Carnos, Brontos. So there's a lot of, although there are Alpha Carnos. But there's no Alpha Bronto. There's Triceratops, I believe there were last year. and they're much harder to kill. So you kind of need, you need to be leveled up a bit. You need kind of leveled up dinos to be able to gather the bones that you need from them to, to make yourself the goodies. So I'd like to be able to do that at least. I think the event's going to last at least about a couple of weeks long. So we should have plenty of time to, even if it's towards the end, to collect up enough stuff to get all the goodies. Or at least a lot of them. And I think will be our first chance, too, with this character to grab chibis. So looking forward to that. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if in order for the chibis to gain levels, you have to kill alphas. You have to have them equipped, and you have to kill an alpha, and the chibi will slowly gain. Will slowly gain some experience, and when he gains a level, you are entitled to an extra level. So out of the gate, you can go up to level 105. You can up that if you, I think for every level, gamma, beta, alpha, every level of ascension that you have, say, from the island. So if you beat the gamma bosses, you get an extra 5 levels. You get 5 more if you beat beta, and you get 5 more if you beat alpha. So you can go up to level 120. And I think you can go up, I don't know if you go up after ascending, or I'm not sure if you really even ascend off of Scorched Earth. But I believe in Aberration, if you ascend off of Aberration, it's the same. You get another 15. So you can go up to 135. And then the chibis will get you 5 extra levels. If you get a chibi up to level 5, it entitles your character to go up extra levels as well. And those 5 can be applied wherever you happen to be. So, for example, like I gained a level on a chibi, and I think my character was like level 88. And what that did is that carried up until I was able to go to 106 instead of 105. So they don't penalize you for achieving that chibi level before you get to the max. So, it entitles you to 1 more level. So anyway, that'll be good to get started with a chibi. Hopefully we get like a cool one that we want to carry with us. But really, that's about it. Yeah, I think we'll get some gameplay started here in a day or two, and we're going to die a ton, but it's going to be a blast. I miss playing Ark, and I'm super excited to get into this. I'm excited about talking about these server settings. Is lame as that is. So, anyway, guys, this is kind of long. This is way longer than I wanted it to be. But I appreciate you watching, and I can't wait to get started on this. And hopefully you guys will enjoy the gameplay as well. And, as always, if you find yourself enjoying what we're doing, throw us a like. And if this helped you guys out, throw us a like, subscribe. It really would help us out in the end. And thanks as always for watching, and look forward to seeing you guys throughout the series. It's going to be a blast. Hopefully we have a lot of fun. Looking forward to it.